This may be good news. The Federal Aviation Administration is looking into whether you can keep that e-reader, that tablet, your iPod perhaps, whether you can keep it on during takeoff and landing. A group including electronic device makers and the Flight Attendants Union is studying the issue and plans to release their findings by July. For Missouri Senator Claire McCaskill, though, things could move a little faster. She's drafting legislation of her own to speed up the process. However, there's one group questioning the use of electronic devices, the National Association of Airline Passengers. Doug Kidd is the executive director of that group. He is also part of the group studying the issue for the FAA. Doug, thanks for being with me, sir.
You're welcome.
Why are you opposed to the idea?
Not at all opposed. I'm part of the group that is studying the increased use of electronic devices on aircraft. What I personally was a little bit upset about was Ms. McCaskill wanting to hurry us along to a predetermined outcome before we'd completed our study.
A story in Politico this weekend notes that the data on potential interference is far from conclusive, as much of it relies on anecdotal accounts of disturbance recounted by pilots and crew. Again, that's from the Politico article. What hard evidence do we have that electronic devices actually interferes with planes?
Well, that's exactly right. A lot of it is anecdotal. But the pilots do see interference from time to time on their instruments in the cockpit. They don't know whether it's coming from personal electronic devices in the cabin, but they don't know that it's not. And there's any number of potential sources for interference, both inside the aircraft and out. Now, there's more than just the issue of personal electronic devices being used. One of the things we'd like to point out is that we're not alone on the aircraft.
Okay.
We have other people who are next to us, and when we're talking about takeoffs and landings, the flight crew, the flight attendants, they have a requirement to make sure that the cabin is secure. If we say to them our personal convenience is more important than their duties, that's really kind of selfish and not really thinking properly of what's important to the flight. Now, to the extent that rules and procedures can be developed that will allow us to use these things, we're all for it. But to just recklessly go ahead and say, well, I'm going to use my reader.
Right. Here's something else, Doug. Senator McCaskill points out that pilots are, they're using iPads apparently in the cockpit. So if the pilots,
that is true.
If the pilots are using iPads, then why can't the folks in the cabin use them too?
Well, the main reason there that I would think is, first of all, the aircraft systems are built to take a certain amount of interference in the normal course of events. They're hardened. But it's one thing to have one device. It's another thing to have a couple of hundred going.
Okay.
Now what's happening, of course, is we've got a moving target. New planes are being built and put in service every day, and the electronics on these planes are getting better and better and better. At the same time, new consumer products are being brought to market every day. Now, it's the obligation of the airlines to make sure that these devices don't interfere with the electronics on the airplane. But how can they do that? They certainly don't have the resources to check every single item under every single condition. Neither does the FAA, and neither does the FCC. All these items are now self-certified.
Doug, it sounds like you are painting a fairly bleak picture for folks who might expect to be able to use their iPod or their iPhone or something, but take off and landing. It doesn't sound like this is something that's going to be happening in the near future.
Well, I can't say. I can't speak for the committee. All I can say is that this is the way we see things. We recognize certain practical difficulties in terms of using these things during takeoff and landing, and common sense would dictate that takeoff and landing being the most sensitive part of any flight. It's the time when the pilots are busiest. It's the time when most accidents occur. And maybe a little bit of courtesy and restraint on the part of passengers would be a good thing.
You know what? That's probably a good spot to leave it. Maybe courtesy and restraint on the part of passengers would be a good thing. Doug Kidd, the National Association of Airline Passengers. Doug, thank you.
You're welcome.